I'm Whitney Baker, coach, facilitator, meditation teacher, and writer. Electric Ideas is for women, especially mothers, who are done disappearing inside their responsibilities. If you're holding everything together but running on empty or feeling disconnected from your needs and desires, this is a place to come back to yourself. If you're ready to feel alive again in the messy middle of real life, you're in the right place. Let's spark something. Welcome back to Electric Ideas. I'm your host, Whitney Baker. So some of you might know this, but Scandinavian countries consistently rank among the world's healthiest and happiest populations. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to welcome Linda Åkeson McGurk to the show today. Linda is a Swedish-American journalist, speaker, and best-selling author of two books, one called There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather, and the other is The Open Air Life. These are books that have inspired readers all over the world to embrace nature as a way of life. Linda is a passionate advocate for the Nordic philosophy of Friluftsliv, which you are going to leave this conversation knowing all about. She has spent more than a decade helping families trade screen time for green time, which is something I know is on the forefront of our minds, both as humans trying to feel well and do well in the world, and also with how we're raising our families. I know from connecting with my coaching clients that many women, especially moms, are craving the opportunity to slow down a little bit. It's almost like there's a nostalgia for a simpler way of being. I think we're looking for chances to be less digitally distracted and more immersed in the present. And as you'll find, the Friluftsliv philosophy that Linda is going to teach us all about is truly an antidote for our hypervigilant parenting, screen-heavy, indoor-centric modern lifestyles. I hope this conversation leaves you feeling inspired and thinking about how you might incorporate a little bit more nature connection into your day-to-day life. Let's dive in. Hi, Linda. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Whitney. Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to start with saying that I will probably not get the pronunciation of today's topic right every time, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So Friluftsliv is the Scandinavian philosophy of open air living. And in my reading of your book, it seems like it really emphasizes unhurried connection to nature. And while the philosophy is not complex, there are some really distinct tenets that to me make it stand out from simply spending time outside. So could you maybe start by grounding us in the basics?
Yeah, of course. So, like you said, the Friluftsliv, and you pronounce it really well, by the way. I've heard it butchered many times, but this was one of the best pronunciations, I have to say. And it is a unique Nordic thing. It doesn't really have an exact equivalent in other languages, but it is usually translated to open air life, as you said. And what it is it's more than just outdoor recreation. It is different in that it really focuses on the relationship with nature. So it's more of a philosophy and a lifestyle than just activities that you do outdoors. A lot of times when you talk about Friluftsliv, things that come to mind are hiking and camping, kayaking, climbing, mountain biking, things like that, and foraging for berries and skiing. Also, skiing is a really big cross-country skiing. But really, it's like I said, it's not just a collection of activities. It's more about being in nature and connecting with nature in everyday life. So even if you're not in a national park or if you don't live near the wilderness, the idea is that you still get outside every day, at least for a little bit, regardless of the season, regardless of the weather, and you find joy in nature. That's really what the core idea is. So even if you live in the city, you use your local green spaces and so on, and you just make time for nature every day. And yeah, that's the basic idea behind it.
I know that something you wrote in your book was that it begins when the engine is off. And you mentioned some of these activities, but that's a little bit nuanced. So can you explain that?
Yeah. So What sets Friluftsliv apart is that it's non-motorized. So it's however you get around outdoors by your own means, whether you're walking or paddling or like riding a bike, but it typically doesn't involve motorized activities. And it's also non-competitive, which really sets it apart from outdoor sports. So a 5K, even if it's a trail run, wouldn't necessarily count as friluftsliv because you're competing against other people. And it's fine to challenge yourself in friluftsliv, challenge yourself to learn new skills, to reach certain summits and so on. But the idea is really to just be in nature and not feel the pressure to achieve or compete because we live in such a competitive society already that Friluftsliv is sort of considered a competition free zone.
Mhm.
And I think that's why so many people appreciate it because truly, when you get out there and just enjoy being in nature, that's what makes it relaxing. The fact that there's no pressure. And a lot of people are pressured at work today. They're pressured from the intensive parenting. They're pressured from, all sorts of things going on in society and lots of bad news and nature is just a way to get away from all that for a little bit and also to nurture your relationship with nature.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of reasons why free loot sleeve could be a balm. Some people would say, and you said that it's kind of a uniquely Nordic thing. There's no real translation anywhere. And some people might say that the concept is so closely tied with the landscapes and the traditions of Scandinavia that it's tricky to like really engage with. But I think that in our digital indoor world, we kind of need it more than ever based on what you were just saying. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it is true that it originated here back in the 1800s, and it was a as a reaction against industrialization and then urbanization and modernization, like all these zations that sort of made our lives more comfortable, but also separated us from nature where we have evolved for millennia. So yeah, the concept evolved here, but our need for nature is universal, and that's why I think that friluftsliv is needed everywhere. And I mean, even if you don't call it that, even if you can't do all the things that we can do in the Nordic countries. We do, for example, have an extensive right to roam, which means we can hike and camp on both private and public land, regardless of who owns it, which, there's really little comparison to that internationally.
Yeah, that's
But
super interesting.
yeah. But then again, I mean, we see nature being used to boost people's well-being across the world. I mean, even doctors are now prescribing park time, for example, in the US. I know doctors in the UK are also prescribing nature time. In Japan, they call it Shinrin-yoku, which is forest bathing, which is not it's different from Friluftsliv in that it is a prescription and it's more about like mindfulness in nature and so on. But the idea is still the same. I mean, at its core, it is about finding this lifestyle that has been lost in modern life. And like you said, now it started with industrialization, but now we have digitalization and we have the whole AI development. And I think people feel the need more than ever to connect with what's real.
Mm.
And Friluftsliv is just one way of doing that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I feel like even in some places, wellness culture focuses on independent individual self improvement. And there was a little bit of a vibe that came through for me that Free Loot Sleeve is kind of more focused on people doing stuff together and over just personal well being, kind of an emphasis on connection that I really appreciated. Can you speak into that a
Yes.
little bit?
Yes, definitely. Because Friluftsliv, since it is ingrained in our culture, it's something that you pass on from one generation to the next. So it goes back. I mean, I remember my grandparents taking me up north to the mountains and going hiking up there when I was only 3 years old. And a lot of a lot of Scandinavians can relate to that, where they have an older relative and parent or grandparent or aunt or uncle who has been essential to, helping you form that bond with nature. So Friluftsliv it's definitely a way to connect with other people. It's often practiced together in groups, and not just with your immediate family, but also, and there are countless organizations that are focused on Friluftsliv and, just doing things together. So and you can, I mean, if you enjoy solitude and nature, you can definitely be out there by yourself too. But I think it stands in contrast to some of these movements that we're seeing now, like the longevity movement, for example, where there's a lot of focus just on the health part and just on the benefits for you as an individual. Whereas Friluftsliv is more a holistic perspective where you honor the bond, and it's not just about your personal health. That's more a consequence of Friluftsliv. It was never sort of promoted as a nature therapy. It's more like we go outside because we belong in nature, and then the health benefits are sort of a bonus. It's just a result of being out there. So it is more of a holistic perspective. And also it comes back to, why we need to do this. And it's because we need to nurture that relationship, because if it's just about our personal health, we kind of forget the perspective from the planetary perspective, which is so key today when we're facing so many challenges with biodiversity loss and climate change and so on, where we need people who understand that we are a part of nature, and that nature is not a destination. It is a part of us, and we are a
Yeah.
part of nature.
That definitely came through in your writing. Kind of the idea is stop viewing nature as something separate and this external commodity that we're kind of taking advantage of, which is easy to forget. It was almost a call to return to ourselves as part of nature when we're spending time outside.
Yeah.
I want to switch. One thing that I thought was interesting from your book is how Friluftsliv plays out in professional environments and influences work culture. What are Scandinavian cultures getting right that the rest of the world in that workplace area might be able to learn from?
Yeah, so Friluftsliv is actually often incorporated into work life because smart business leaders understand that bringing nature into the workplace can also benefit the company, because people become more focused and more productive and just generally happier at work. So what I see at workplaces around here is companies telling people to take walks or going for runs on paid, like during paid time during the workday. They often have like team building events in nature, like going for like a camping or glamping trip instead of the usual conference trip. A friend of mine who works at an outdoor clothing company, they brought in like an elite runner for some time to help coach the staff and how to get started with trail running.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of examples like that. Walk and talk meetings are becoming very popular, where you hold sort of more creative meetings outdoors, so just by walking and talking. And I think people find that it's a lot different from sitting in a conference room, where a lot of times it can get a little stiff, and you get set in
Yeah.
your ways. And what happens when you go outdoors and you're walking side by side is that the whole sort of power dynamics change, and people who might not be very extroverted or talkative usually find it a little easier to open up, or just sitting around a campfire and things like that. When you do team building events outdoors, everybody has to chip in and help out. It's not the usual just, oh, open bar, everybody gets drunk. It's like, no, we help build the fire, and it's all about, having a good time outdoors.
Yeah. I just want to reflect that back to you because one thing that stood out too is that it's kind of philosophically this movement and outdoor time is just part of the way of being. and it's woven in. It's not some big, like, I got to go to the gym and get my hours in, or like work out in my corporate, facility for workouts over the lunch break. But it just seems like it's really embraced as a lifestyle. And I feel like you said the walking meetings, the change of scenery, I think is not only good for our bodies, but good for the brains. I think we're going to see a lot more about how it sparks creativity in the coming
Yes.
decades.
Yes, definitely. Because I mean, that is one of the big benefits about going outside is that it really opens up, it activates parts of our brain that are not as active otherwise. And it really opens up for creativity and imagination in both children and adults. And I mean, there are studies that have actually measured this. So it's not just something that I'm making up here. It's actually
Yeah.
there's plenty of research to back that up. So
Yeah.
definitely a lot of benefits both in your personal life but also in business life. And like you said, it's Friluftsliv. The nice thing about Friluftsliv is that it's really something that follows you from the day as cradle to the grave, from the day you're born, where a lot of parents like leave their babies outside to nap year round. And then also at daycare and at preschool, the kids are outside for hours every day. The forest schools were created here originally and are very popular. But also, as you reach old age, the nice thing about Friluftsliv is that you can keep, I mean, assuming that you're in reasonable health, good health, you can keep practicing Friluftsliv at whatever level works for you. And it doesn't have to be conquering mountains. It can just be going out in the garden. I mean, my
Yeah.
grandmother, for example, she was really into gardening. And even though, yeah, we may not traditionally include that in as a like a Friluftsliv activity, but it's still about being outdoors and connecting with nature and getting your hands in the dirt. And she just loved gardening and she lived for her little potato patch and whatnot. And as she got older and then she got, her last year of life, she got ill with cancer and her world kind of shrunk, but she kept tending to the flowers in her backyard. She just sort of kept a small patch of flowers and it still gave her a lot of joy, until the very last months when she had to move into a nursing home. But, it can be very powerful, that relationship with the living world and planting things too.
When I was reading, I loved picturing the Scandinavian babies napping outside all year round, regardless of the
Yeah.
weather. And also, just it seems normal that kids would just be playing outside a lot. And I think that there's almost this nostalgia for our generation to get back to a little bit of that simplicity. I
Yeah.
know that research shows that adults and children are living an increasingly indoor lifestyle. But Scandinavian, I know that it's a common adage that there's no bad weather, and you kind of nodded to that. Can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about that? Because right now, where I live in the Midwest of the United States, the sun's out. I'm planning on getting some outdoor time inspired by reading your book all week. But it's not
Yeah.
as easy when it's dark and rainy and cold or below zero. So I
Right.
think we could use a little Scandinavian inspiration.
Yeah, yeah. So the saying goes, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes. And if you've grown up in Scandinavia, you've heard it a million times growing up. And it's what I've been telling my kids since they were little. And it simply means that, we go outside every day, regardless of the weather. And it's just a little motivational phrase, I suppose, to get kids out there and just to let them know that there's no point in arguing. And it's not just parents telling kids this; it's also their teachers and preschool teachers and coaches and whatnot. I like that philosophy because it helps make outdoor time a habit. I think that habit of getting outside every day, regardless, it is really key to the whole Friluftsliv culture. If you are raised that way, I think it really sort of is stuck in the back of your head as you get older. I mean, that's how it's been for me. I still feel the need to get out because I feel that it does so much good for my well-being. It's like even if it's pouring down rain, it's like I literally never regret a walk, no matter
Mhm.
how miserable the weather might be. And if nothing else, if it is, I mean, and a key, I should mention, a key part of this is, of course, to dress for the weather. So you give yourself the best chances of being comfortable outdoors because nobody wants to be cold and wet, but you don't have to if you dress properly. And on some days when the weather is really rough, I mean, the best part of going outside is coming back inside, which
Mm.
is also a good reason because that's when you discover that the beauty is really in the contrast. I mean, I think it helps you feel gratitude over what you have, just the little things that we have forgotten to appreciate, like a warm home, water coming out of the faucet, all these things. Like we just have to go to the fridge and get food, and that's one of the things that modern life has sort of, we've come to take those things for granted, and going outside in rough weather and experience some discomfort. Research has actually shown that that can be good for our well-being as well. It helps us become resilient as well. And yeah, like I said, the joy is often in the contrasts.
That's really interesting. I hadn't ever thought about it that way, but there is a feeling that's hard to explain if you don't live somewhere that where it's gets really cold and snowy of it's almost camaraderie too. Like if you go to someone's house and everyone is like freezing to get there and it's bitterly cold and you peel off the layers and the fire is going, it's like, okay. So
Yeah.
that contrast does make you appreciate.
Hmm.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to something you said because I'm a nature loving city dweller. So it was really good for me to think a little bit about that and reading your book because I often want to do and do prioritize bigger nature when I travel because I live in a city. But the more I read about the open air philosophy, it's a little bit about simplicity and frugality being part of the experience. And it really doesn't require epic adventures. And for me, I was just like, you know what? There's some forest preserves that are between 30 and 40 minutes from my home that I probably took my kids to when they were little, but I haven't gone back there for so long. So I was wondering if you could reemphasize a little bit about just kind of looking for this where we are, and that almost being part of the philosophy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It very much is. I think if you live in a city, it's even more important to try and seek out those opportunities for encounters with nature. And really, when you think about it, nature is all around us. I mean, even in the city, there are plenty of opportunities out there to connect with other, non-human living beings. So there are, I mean, birds almost everywhere. Most cities have trees in some form or shape. And even just the weather. The weather is also part of nature. Feeling that wind on your face when it's windy out, or, feeling the rain and the sun and those contrasts, watching the sunrise or the sunset or the night sky. I mean, all that. Those are all things that connect us to something greater than ourselves. And I think that's important regardless of where you live.
Yeah, it's tricky because I felt this yearning when I was reading your book to pass the value of time in nature to my children. And I'll admit it's tricky in
Mm.
this day and age and living in the city, which many people do. I liked it's a small part of your book, but you talked about thinking about Friluftsliv almost daily, weekly, and then maybe once or twice a year as a bigger intentional dose. For women in my community who realistically lead full lives, many are mothers, they've got aspirations in life and lead full
Yeah.
lives. How could they begin with that lens?
Yeah, so what you mentioned there is what I call the Friluftsliv pyramid. So it's almost like the food pyramid, but with outdoor time. So at the base of the pyramid, you have things that are easy to access on a daily or near daily basis, whether it is walking your kids to school or maybe heading out to a park for lunch instead of going, to a restaurant or a cafe. Maybe it's going for a walk with your partner after dinner at night. I think it's different for every person. Like you have to try and find a rhythm that works for you because Friluftsliv is all about trying to work nature into your rhythm. And then at the middle of the pyramid, you have weekend Friluftsliv, which is when you have time to get outside for bigger chunks of time. Maybe you can meet up with friends at a park, have a cookout, or even go camping for a night in a regional park, something like that. And then at the top of the pyramid is vacation Friluftsliv, and that's when you take the time to plan maybe a far away trip or something that requires a little more time. Maybe you can get away for a week, to a place that is a little wilder just to get that experience as well. And maybe that's something you just do once a year, but it can still, add a lot of value to your life. So I think if you look at nature time that way, I think that can really help you to incorporate it into your life. But really, I think people overestimate how much time it takes to benefit from nature. I mean, when you look at the research, the benefits really start at just 15 minutes per day.
Mhm.
And, if you can't make 15 minutes per day happen, then you have to take, I really encourage you to take a hard look at your calendar because this is important. This can do so much good for your health and for your relationship with nature. And ideally, like at around 2 hours per week, like that's, a lot of good things start to happen. And more is more, of course, when it comes to nature time. But that doesn't mean that these little segments are not important because even within minutes from going outside, our body starts to relax. Like our cortisol levels go down, our heart rate slows, blood pressure goes down. Like we have all these physical reactions and we start to feel less stressed and more relaxed. And, that's just within minutes from going outside.
Yeah, it's free good medicine for our modern world and modern motherhood. And I
Oh,
agree.
yeah.
One thing you wrote, a quote that I really liked is in a society that idolizes having a packed schedule and always being online and available, Friluftsliv is an invitation to turn off the distractions and be grounded in the present moment. We touched on it, but I feel like we talked about motors. I just want to make sure that everyone knows this is also like non-digital time, which is harder
Yeah.
than, some of my
Yeah.
clients, I encourage them to go for a walk and I'm like, leave your leave your phone in your behind if you can. Otherwise, like maybe turn off notifications and don't stop to like take pictures. Like, can we really
Yeah.
disconnect? Do you want to talk a little bit about what that quote of yours brings up for you?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's more important than ever today that we do try to disconnect from devices and get outside. And granted that there are uh, great apps too that you can use in the outdoors. For example, like I have a bird identification app, I have some other some trail apps and things like that. So, I mean, there are times when I use my phone in the outdoors. I shouldn't lie about that. But I do recommend getting outside without your phone as well because I think our devices add so much stress, like
Mhm.
unconsciously, it just piles on our nervous systems. And I think we can see it today with the amount of anxiety and depression that we're seeing. And women are disproportionately affected. I just saw some figures that almost 1 in 3 women today have had depressive episodes
Mm.
and a lot of young people, especially young women, and especially those who use their devices and social media excessively. So to me, like I've had to create, I think we just have to be more intentional about making that space for these nature encounters or nature, whatever you call it. So like last year, I did something more radical. I started going out sleeping once per month for the whole year. So I was out for about 24 hours, left my phone behind, just to get into a more meditative, deeper state. And it was so, it was so good. Like I cannot overstate what it did to my mental health last
Mm.
year. It helped me dig out of a pretty dark spot, and I think it could help others too. And I know it may not be possible. Like maybe you don't feel safe going out without a phone. To me, it was always, since I think because I didn't I mean, I'm old enough to not have grown up with a phone. Got my first one when I was in my 20s. So, I remember camping with my parents without a phone. And so to me, it wasn't that scary to do it. Like even if I was alone, I felt very safe doing it. And the thing is, even if research has shown that even if you have your phone in airplane mode, if it's next to you, then you still get distracted by it. So
Mhm.
like you actually have to put it in a different room in order to be able to just like forget about it. So
Yeah.
that's how powerful the pull is from that digital world and those
Yeah.
dopamine fixes. So yeah.
It's it's crazy. I feel like you're saying it almost is. I think that some of us, and I'm a work in progress. I'm navigating what feels right, but some of us, I think, are in such a rhythm of being always connected more than we even really register that we don't know how good it would feel to kind of have a bigger reset like that. So I appreciate that
Yeah.
inspiration. We're coming up on time. I want to share one more quote that I just really enjoyed from your book, just to give people a sense of your reflections. You wrote, "At a time when a packed calendar has become a status symbol, there is something quaint and comforting about getting up at the crack of dawn simply to tune into the sound of birdsong." Are there any final acts of Friluftsliv that just bring simplicity and peace to your life that you'd like to remind people of in closing?
I think I just want to circle back to what I said at the start about our need for nature being universal. I think, unfortunately, I think we've created societies today that are not very conducive to our mental or physical health. Many of us live in cities. It's a stressful environment. It's like constantly poking on our nervous system. And I think we need to be intentional about creating, even if we're not going to go back to living in caves, right? But we can still create time and space where we at least recreate that bond that we once had. And I see it all the time. Like I see that people are searching. I shared a clip on Instagram or a reel on Instagram a while back that talked about one of the things that I write about in my book, which is the dawn chorus, how the Swedish public service radio station, how they air a whole night of birdsong every May. And that reel, it went viral. Like it has to date over 2 million views, thousands of comments, people writing that they were in tears hearing the birds and that they were so emotional about it and saying, "Oh, we need this," and oh, and how much they love birds, and people sharing their own stories with birds. And to me, that's testament to the power of nature and how it's somehow that's what we all have in common. I mean, and at a time when everything feels so polarized and there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of just bad news, then nature is at least something that we all share. It's something that we all depend on. It is our mutual home. So I think that's what's the most powerful really about this whole Friluftsliv philosophy.
I always end my conversations with a reflection opportunity for my community. So when it comes to consciously choosing or curating more of the open air lifestyle, We discussed, despite these real, true demands of modern lifestyle and motherhood, what's one question women could be asking themselves more?
I would encourage mothers to ask themselves, is this how I want to spend my time? Is this important? Or is there something else that I could be doing instead? Because I think a lot of motherhood today is feeling pressure from society and from expectations, living at like doing more, thinking that doing more is better. When in reality, I think a lot of times we could do less and be a lot happier.
Well put. That's
Mm.
a lovely place to leave us. I know that people will want to find you and read your books and follow you and support your work. So, where can we find you, Linda?
Yeah, so my books can be purchased pretty much anywhere online that sells books, or maybe your independent bookstore, depending. And I have a Substack newsletter called The Open Air Life. So please connect with me there or find me on Instagram or Facebook under the handle Rain or Shine Mama.
All right. Thank you so much. This was a
Mm.
delight. I really appreciate you joining me.
Thank you. I enjoyed being here.
I'm so glad you joined me today. If you're looking for more, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman. And if you enjoyed the show, I invite you to support me by leaving a review or sharing it with a friend. Hope you have an inspired day.